Welcome. Let's start. Would you introduce yourself for the audience, please?
Yeah. So my name is Salif Mahamane. I'm an associate professor of psychology at Western Colorado University. Um, and I also do a little bit of consulting. My areas of research are specifically in environmental psychology and cognitive science and some cognitive neuroscience. And so, what I've looked at is the relationship between different environments and our ability to focus and pay attention. And then personally, I am someone with ADHD. I'm the parent of a now teenager with ADHD. And yeah, so that's kind of my background in a nutshell. I don't know if there's anything I left out that you'd also like to hear me include.
I think that's great. It's a great segue to start the conversation. And just for your information, I identify as an adult with ADHD and with multiple kids with ADHD. So got a lot in common. Let's have some fun, okay?
Yeah, for sure.
So you study attention for a living,
Hmm.
and from a science perspective, and you live it every day. And of course, it looks different for every person who has attention issues. Do
Hmm.
you see any clear gaps between what the research says about ADHD and attention and what it actually feels like to live with inattention or attention issues with ADD?
Yeah, I think some of those things are just kind of naming it as an attention disorder rather than like uh, I don't even know disorder, but something that is more that more directly affects executive functioning, and so our ability to control what we pay attention to and to use that voluntary or directed attention um, to the degree that neurotypical people would do. So I think the research and that comes through in like the DSM and other diagnostic tools is that the research kind of reflects this one particular view but leaves some things out. And I think still traditionally points to it as a pathology.
Yeah, yeah. I like to talk about it as a self-regulation,
Yes, very much
right,
so. Yeah,
condition. And I hate the word disorder. I like to
yeah.
lean into condition.
Condition,
Brain
neurotype.
firing.
Yeah, a neurotype, all these different ways of, I think, just being more complete in how we look at the entire framework and the entire person who has ADHD.
Before we go on with this session, I just wanted to remind you that you can still upgrade to the Summit's VIP Pass. Besides the lifetime access to all the sessions, you also get the audio files, you get the workbook for each session, you get the expert action blueprint with key takeaways from each masterclass, you get the English subtitles, and really a bunch of other things that will save you tons of time and really make a huge difference with your kid and with your family relationships. So, if you're a busy parent and you want to get the most out of the summit, then I really encourage you to find the button somewhere on this page and go check it out. You can still get access at a discounted price before our summit ends. And now, let's get you back to the program.
It's such a more complicated condition than people realize. It's not just, in the old days, it used to be an 8-year-old boy can't focus.
Hmm.
But now we know that it's got this broad range of challenges that people face.
Right, right.
If you were, so if you could be, king for the day and rewrite one line in the DSM, what would you change so it better reflects the lived experience of ADHD?
I would I would address the kind of the hyper focus issue and the hyper focus um, qualities because it one of the reasons that I didn't think I had ADHD for such a long time and thus didn't get diagnosed until I was in my late 20s was that I could pay attention to things for hours and hours at a time, but those things weren't what I was told I was supposed to focus on. And that gets back to my previous response about executive function rather than just attention, is that choosing and directing what you pay attention to is a is a different thing than just how able you are to keep attention on one thing. So for example, I'm really into I'm really into a lot of things, but I like traditional archery. I like music. I like, canoeing and a lot of really kind of specific hobbies like that. And I could read about those hobbies for like 8 hours straight, right? And I can forget to eat lunch. I can forget to get up and go to the bathroom. I can forget to do and just not do all these other things, but I can do what I'm interested in naturally for hours and hours on end. And as a teenager, that was things like playing video games or hanging out with my friends, and there being no feeling of like, all right, I need to go home. Is like if our parents didn't say anything, we'd have spent days and days on end together, right? And so I can do a lot of things for long for prolonged amounts of time and keeping my attention on them, but it's what I need to pay attention to be what the world calls productive on a regular basis.
Well, and just that notion of attention is so complicated. There's choosing what to pay attention to, attending to it, keeping your attention,
Right,
moving your attention back when you're distracted. I mean, it's
right,
not as simple as can
right.
you pay attention or not?
And that moving your attention back when you're distracted piece is the executive function piece, right? So if I do get started on some work and I'm like, okay, I have some momentum, right? And I'm finally getting some grading done or working on a paper or something like that, what is, you know, the danger almost to the point of like, scariness is that if I stop for a moment, right? If I like, I'm hungry, I'm going to go get some food. It's like, I may never come back to this task. I never make it back. And that's when it's something really important, like work duties, that is actually scary. Like I get worried. It's like, well, I just started grading. What if I go make a sandwich and I don't ever come back and start grading? And sometimes it's not because, oh, I don't want to do that. It's because like I literally forget it exists. We actually have this saying in my house where we talk about, oh, I forgot it existed. Instead of like saying I forgot, it's like, you didn't eat the leftovers. And my son will be like, I forgot they existed. Or something like and all these different things. Yeah.
I love that. Well, and what I love about that is it's not beating yourself up for the memory glitch, if you will, or for I like to say there's two time frames. There's now and not now.
Yeah.
Right, and you're describing there's now, and then when I'm not here, that's not now anymore.
Yeah.
You've described your mental world as popping popcorn.
Mhm.
I've described it, I think, in my world as pinball.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what is popping popcorn? Can you
Um,
explain it?
so kind of like you so if you imagine popping popcorn, so like literally either whether you're doing it in the bag in the microwave or on the stove top, you start the heat. It's going for maybe 30 seconds to a minute. You don't hear much. And then you hear the first pop and then the next one. And then each successive pop comes close, more quicker and quicker. And then it's like constant, right? And I feel like sometimes that's how we have ideas in our ADHD brains is that like you're kind of hanging out, letting your mind wander. Maybe you're listening to a conversation, doing something interesting, and that'll give you an idea or a thought. And then that thought leads to the next one. And now it's like they're going so fast. And sometimes I can keep track of it, but people with me can't. And they're like, wait, you just jumped like this and this and this. I'm like, no, because this is connected to this and that's connected this way and this connect. And they don't see it that way. And sometimes they feel frustrated or like I'm jumping topics when really they are related. Like I don't think I'm jumping topics, like that. So that's kind of that popcorn thing. And then you start, and if it's a creative or brainstorming process, I can move really fast in those kind of brainstorming spaces or where that's the goal. And sometimes I'm getting a little frustrated by people not keeping up. I'm like, how are you not with me? Like, let's go.
See, there's like 12 thoughts I had in between this and this. Well, and what really jumps at me is I do think that people don't necessarily understand the process. And the other thing that really jumped at me was processing speed. So there's this way in which people with ADHD sometimes, even if they have slow processing speed, they
Mhm.
can be thinking quickly in the way you just described.
Right.
Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So I think more so than any given person having slow processing speed, and I think this is what you're saying, is that there are certain types of tasks or moments where it feels or appears that way. So for example, if I'm trying to read a page in a book and I read it, I get to the bottom of the page, realize I haven't retained or read anything because my mind was thinking about something else. And I'm like, oh, I have to go until I go back to the top, start reading it more deliberately, get to the bottom of the page, realize I didn't get it again. And I do that. I have to sometimes do that three to five times to get to read. And that comes off as like slow processing speed because I'm like not able to stay on it. It's taking me a lot longer than people. But in this other type of thinking, this creative, um, divergent thinking, where we're trying to come up with a lot of different possibilities, sometimes then it goes pretty fast. And I think a lot of people with ADHD often appear slow processing because we're told that only this type of processing, only this type of learning or thinking is what matters or is productive, when in reality, those same people telling us that, teachers, bosses, supervisors, parents, are heavily relying on us to do to also do the type of thinking that we're good at and that we do quicker, more efficient. And they don't realize that. And I think because of that, we don't either. We don't realize all the times our parents were grateful that that we solved a problem that no one else could see the route to, right? Or a teacher was grateful for how you address something in class or in a dynamic kind of situation rather than, on your formal schoolwork, right? And that type of thing. So I think that's how I see those two ways of thinking, is that a, a lot of us are fast processors, but it depends on the type of mental task that we're being asked to perform.
I love that. I mean, as I'm hearing you thinking about, and I'm processing, I will hear myself say, like in a meeting or something,
Mhm.
hang on, can you say that again? And
Yeah.
what I realize is I'm asking them to say it again. It's not actually that I processed it slowly, it's that I didn't process it.
Yeah.
And I need to hear what they said in order to process it, in order to respond.
Right. And I've been working on myself trying to do that more and not feel guilty or bad about it, because that is you taking up and occupying the space that you deserve to take up with the type of person that you are. Right. So it's like, I'm here, I'm this way. And that means I might be asking you to repeat yourself. And next moment, you'll be asking me to slow down. And I need to maybe be patient with you. So let's be patient with each other, you know?
So for the parents listening, I really want to really highlight what you just said, because we want to make sure we've got our kids' attention before we start talking to them.
Yes,
Right? Really important.
that is,
And and then you want to give them the time to process it. And if they didn't get it, let's let go of the frustration that they didn't get it
yeah.
and realize that now they might be ready to hear it when they weren't a second ago.
I my son and I respond to my wife often. She'll come in the room and just start talking to one of us, and then she'll get mad when I'm like, she'll ask a question. She realized I wasn't looking, and like, you didn't even get my attention. Like, you didn't even say, "Hey, I want," like, just some type of conversation starter, right? Because I'll be reading or on my phone or doing something, and I even get frustrated because to me, you're interrupting, just like someone would interrupt a conversation. And it's like you're interrupting what I was doing, and it might have looked like nothing to you because it just looks like distraction or like off task. But really, I was like deep in this train of thought, and you're like interrupting without saying excuse me, which is what we're supposed to say if we want to, like, and so it's really interesting, but she doesn't see anything because it's happening in our heads. And so then she thinks we're available, and then we get frustrated, like, I wasn't available. I was doing something.
In my family, you'll hear my kids, all of us say, "Can I have your attention for a second?"
Yeah.
Right? Just that
Yeah.
makes such a difference in how we process information.
Mhm.
Okay, so you tell parents that when their kid is distracted,
Mhm.
and this is perfect for this, like you tell parents to ask them what they were thinking about, because it could be fascinating. So in that moment, if she came in, instead of talking, she was checking in to say, Instead of what are you being productive with,
Mm.
like what were you thinking about?
Right.
Distraction becomes a portal to fascination for you, is what I'm
Right.
understanding.
And what that communicates, several things. So one, it acknowledges that you may have been active in your mind and that you may have been doing something, which just makes you feel like a little bit more respected. Like, yeah, thanks for asking first. Also, it shows, especially in a parenting context, it shows the child a lot of value in what they are thinking or doing, and that you're not assuming that if they're not doing something that's traditionally productive, that they weren't being productive and weren't figuring something out, right? And so that, and it shows, just like anything, interest, right? If you have a child who takes piano lessons, they feel special when you want to hear them play the piano, right? Or and whatever they might do. So it's the same thing. It's like, you're important to me. I want to know what you were thinking, right? And that communicates a lot of that value that they have in your life, and that, especially because they're going to have, almost inevitably have trouble with self-esteem and all of that with the messaging they're getting back from the world. So some countering to that occasionally is really helpful. So just showing that you value what they are doing.
Yeah, I used to say to my kids, I love the way your brain works. I
Yeah.
don't always understand it, but I love the way your brain
Yeah.
works.
Totally. Totally.
So you've said you've got you call yourself a pathological procrastinator.
Yeah.
And yet, like most people with ADHD, when something really matters,
Uh-huh.
you get it done.
Yeah.
So what's the irresistible quality that helps you get it done?
Um, Often it's, yeah, this is, so I'll just, yeah, I'll just use this as an example. So finishing my doctorate degree, finishing my dissertation, I had already started this job, and some promotion and keeping the job ultimately was contingent upon finishing my doctorate within a time frame. So I was doing this. All I had to do was my dissertation, finished my coursework, and all of that, and it was just getting up and up. Like, it was just kind of dragging on because, like, I had my daily duties and responsibilities, and whatever's in the moment is kind of what needs attention. And yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so what actually happened is that my the university I went to for my doctorate was communicated that, as a whole university policy, your classes, if you haven't graduated in a certain amount of time, your courses that you took begin to expire, where you'd have to take them again, right? There's like I think it was like a 7 or 8 year deadline on this. So the courses I took my very first semester at that school were coming up, and they were like, you're going to run out of this. And I was like, oh crap. So I was like, and so then that summer, I remember the first half of the summer, I just like completely insulated and just like stayed up in our other room for like 6 weeks, day and night, sleeping up there on the futon, like just disappeared, and then emerged with a PhD kind of thing. I was like, I got to get this done or else it's not happening. And so much is contingent upon it. So for me, big, you know, immovable, institutional boundary, like deadlines. It's like, this can't be extended anymore. Like, this can't be. And it's so important to me that it's not something I'm going to let go because it can't be like adjusted. It's like, at this point, it's like do or don't. And there's something about that that is, even though it doesn't feel good at the time, it is the type of stimulation, or a type of way of getting the stimulation that an ADHD brain needs to not be bored. Because boredom registers as pain for us, I think, in our nervous system. And so it's kind of like, this has to get done, and it's like almost that gamification of it, or that intensity that's like, all right, and now, and I wish it wasn't like that. I hate the stress of the last minute, but
Well, so I want to run something by you, because one of the things I've come to see is that when you decide what you want to do, right, the thing, the dissertation, right, we call it taking aim, um, and you know what's important to you about it,
right,
and you have the intention to do it,
Right.
right? Then you need some structure to help you do it. Your structure was to hold yourself away for 6 weeks,
Right. Some
right?
and I wouldn't have necessarily been able to do that if there weren't for privilege and circumstances. Go ahead.
Right. Well, and you didn't make that choice until you had the motivation from the university
Right.
of the deadline.
Right.
So you were motivated by urgency. So it's not that you didn't intend to do it. Like
Right.
you knew you wanted to finish your
I
dissertation.
knew the
You
importance.
needed the motivation and the structure combined to get it done. Does that resonate?
Yes, definitely. And when things are left to me, I tend to I think a lot of neurotypical people and a lot of people with ADHD who have kind of hacked it, which I'm still trying to do, is that been able to figure out a way of self-imposing that level of structure and what I felt. And so far, I mainly get that externally. So like the university is telling me like this immovable deadline, you're going to have this opportunity or not. And if you don't make it, something like that is like, okay, I have to do it. But anything that has easily extendable deadlines, especially if I'm the only one who suffers the consequences, then it's very hard for me to get going. That's another thing. And I know we're on a time frame, but when it's a group project or group work and my procrastination will directly slow down or hurt the team, that is also very motivating for me to get things done. So I'll tend to prioritize something that if I'm gonna hold up a lot of other people or it's gonna affect their progress, then that makes me very like I get it. I start getting things done, and everything that's just for my sake gets moved to the back because I'm self-sacrificing sometimes in that way. So
Well, so many things to say. What you're speaking to is the different ways that we find motivation, and like we teach that there are 5 motivators, and
right,
now is not the time for that. But you're identifying that urgency is a motivator for you, connecting with others is a motivator. You've talked about novelty and interest as motivators. So
yeah,
there, we helping people identify what their motivation is part of the process of getting stuff done.
hmm,
So I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about emotional regulation.
right,
One of the things you've talked about, and I love this because it's such a great example, is that sometimes you can get really upset or frustrated by something,
mhm,
and then you forget that you were upset. The example I
yeah,
like to use is the non-ADD spouse the ADD spouse who picks a fight at bedtime so that they can get the stimulation to go to sleep. And then they go to sleep, and then their non-ADD spouse is awake all night fuming, and then the next morning, the ADD spouse doesn't even remember
yeah, yeah.
that there was an
That's a
upset.
perfect example. Yeah,
So when we look at that recovery, on the one hand, there's this ability to let it go. On the other hand, there's an emotional avoidance.
right,
So can you speak a little bit to that and how parents might be able to understand that?
yeah. Excuse me. So, um, on the one hand, I think there's just a natural letting things go that aren't that consequential, like you were saying. And I don't think that's inherently problematic. I think socially, maybe like because there can create resentment and things like that. Um, but I do think escapism is a little different and can look the same way, but does need to be maybe addressed or revisited. So if it's a deeper, like you use the example of picking a fight, if it is some deeper running issue, then bringing it up but then turning away from it and that kind of thing cannot be very productive or healthy in a social way, whether that's an intimate relationship or some other type of relationship. But I do like in in contrast, resilience is maybe like something bad happens or something difficult or challenging happens and you're able to, if you can figure out a solution, which our creativity does help us do, I think. If you can find a solution, you've kind of got it figured out and you can cruise past it on it. Like often I won't remember that that was a problem I had earlier this week and that I solved because it's just like, I've kind of gone through that. And what I like, I just remember from high school chemistry, and I think of this as an analogy. Um, my teacher, when she was explaining uh, I think like called potential heat, or I don't remember, I should know, but basically that certain elements or metals like cool off really quickly. So like aluminum retains heat not very long at all. And so I kind of think of it like that. Like we can get really hot, so to speak, and like and whether that's upset or angry or whatever, but then we also kind of like can like sometimes cool off really fast too, right? And so like you have something cooking in the oven with aluminum on it, you can often grab the aluminum and set it, and as soon as you pull it out of the oven, it's like cool. Like often I can grab that with my bare hand, but I can't grab, the dish or the pan or the whatever that same way. And so we just kind of like can let go of that sometimes. And um, that can be a good thing.
Which is both a gift and a challenge, right? It's a gift and it's a challenge when we don't learn from our mistakes,
Right.
for example, for parents. And so to understand that sometimes kids with ADHD really do have a hard time learning from their mistakes,
Hmm.
it allows us to come to them with more compassion.
Yeah.
I want to shift gears and let's talk about compassion and self love, because it sounds like that's an area that you spend a lot of time with. Um, and you talk about radical compassion, which
Hmm.
and I do too. I love that. When everyone's tired, sometimes it's hard to access compassion. There's this gap, right, between what a parent feels like they have the capacity for in terms of compassion and what a kid needs in terms of compassion. So, can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. And I think this intersects with, it applies to everyone, but there's also kind of like some nuance for parents who also have ADHD trying to parent children who have ADHD. So self-regulation and like processing emotions, especially things like frustration and those types of challenging emotions that we usually are trying to keep control of ourselves when we're having these types of feelings, anger, frustration, etc. That actually takes executive function, and that is self-regulation, and it uses that effortful mechanism or type of attention that I refer to as voluntary attention. It's also called top-down attention, endogenous attention, and because it requires that, and we know that the resources for that, the mental resources for that, are limited or finite. By being tired at the end of the day, and we all can relate to this, that's when those types of connections and ability to help each other kind of start falling down, falling apart, kind of, especially in a family when everyone's been at work or school or wherever they've been all day. And so then you don't have the energy for it. And then things just start, just like when you have the energy for anything else, like physical energy, you get sloppy, right? So like if your legs are tired because you've been, running a few miles, then they might be a little bit like clumsier. Your fine motor movements and coordination might be taxed. Same thing here. So emotionally speaking, for parents, it's like your ability to self-regulate, your ability to hold it together and show up for the kid is taxed, right? You're just like, it's just like, yeah, it's like that. And it's like, I don't have it right now. I'm about to lose it because they're losing it. They're losing it maybe sounds like, depending on their age or who they are, sounds like screaming and crying in frustration. And that's like grating on my senses. And yeah, so I think um, one thing is to first, like that same piece of self forgiveness and teaching that to your kids. So you might even, one of your best tools would be just set the example of you just breathing and being like, I need a break. I can't handle this right now. I'm just going to breathe. And maybe, and like they, even if they're not, going to acknowledge it, they're noticing what you do and how you've handled your stress.
Well, I just want to say, and what you just said is, I can't handle this. It's not you're
Right.
too much right now.
Right.
I need a break. Give me just a second. I need to take a breath.
Yep.
That makes it about me and doesn't make the kid then feel like you're putting their behavior back on them somehow.
Yeah. And when it's that overwhelm, um, one thing our son, when he won't engage because he's at his limit and he's getting more frustrated, and sometimes because we're trying to talk about something that requires a lot of effortful thought and effortful attention, he gets more and more escalated, and we're at the end of our day. It's like, I need to know what you want on this grocery list, because we're about to go pick up groceries, get groceries, and you're not going to have the snacks, and you're a picky eater, and I need to get to bed. And he's like, I don't know right now. And so then that what we've learned is that we have to give them that same break that we need. And we feel we understand how the world works in terms of our limited time and our schedules and how busy we are, and like, I need to make the grocery list now because I won't have time for the next 3 days, etc. But he, like, that doesn't matter to him right now. He's like, I am beyond overwhelmed. I am so tired mentally from today. I can't give you what you want from me, and the more you scream and fuss and the more you have a tantrum about it, I'm definitely not going to be able to hold it together for you, right? We don't want to ask our children to be our self-regulators, like or our co-regulators. It's our job to be theirs. And so I think by like setting an example of taking a break, noticing that they need a break whether you like it or not, we've often noticed that if we just leave them alone for 5 minutes, usually it's like less time than we think
Yeah.
gonna hold.
Well, the other thing I hear you speaking to is to recognize and respect that they're dealing with their emotional stuff. They're doing their emotional work. I mean, when we talk to parents, often it's about helping them realize how much effort a kid with ADHD has put in before they ever get to school.
Right.
Right. Just functioning in the day, they're already doing so much just to control themselves, manage themselves, self-regulate. And what I hear you speaking to is how important it is for the parents to recognize that.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. I think see what they're doing, right? And we want to be seen that same way by our partners, by our friends, by our coworkers, and by our kids, right? We want to be seen in that same way of when we're doing well and when we're not doing well, when we need support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to cover one last area before we move into rapid fire
Okay.
questions, because in your story about being a young man with ADHD diagnosed, and I'm with you. I was diagnosed in my 40s, so
Okay.
interesting to get to that point and then look back and everything makes
Makes
sense.
sense. Yeah.
What is there a moment from your childhood when someone made you feel seen or capable or special because of your ADHD that kind of gave you that thing to hold on to? You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. And I think that is interesting because I was going to bring this up, and I did, I guess, earlier, but about being diagnosed as an adult is that now that you go back and look at things, those people who were doing that and making you feel seen and capable because you didn't know, they didn't maybe know you had ADHD, but they treated you in a way that, in spite of, or including, or with all those characteristics, they still treated you in a way that was what you needed as someone with ADHD. And so, someone that comes to mind for me, and there are probably more people than I could stop and list, but someone that just pops into my head with that question is my GT teacher, and at that time that stood for gifted and talented. I don't know what they say, and I am hoping they've updated that term since the 90s. Okay. Yeah. So I don't, not necessarily happy about that. But anyway, she was this but she's not my teacher anymore. But she is this amazing human being who really saw all of our different, like, potential and uniqueness in this way that was just allowed. And it was so interesting because I think it was, to get into that classroom, there was some, aptitude test and some things like that, which, as a standard thing, you wouldn't think maybe someone with ADHD would get through that. But her classroom and what we did in there one day a week was like, you could have told me it was designed for kids with ADHD. Yeah, like there were games, there were all these things. Like, she created a space where there was no, like, nothing was off the table, right? There wasn't anything that you couldn't talk to her about doing and any interest that she wouldn't facilitate, as an educator. And that was huge because it was just huge. And we did all kinds of stuff. And there was formal learning, like learning about these topics, but there is also just kind of time to let yourself explore in creative, interesting ways, constructive ways, I would say, more than maybe productive ways. But anyway, I credit her. And if she's watching this, hi, Miss Copeland, thank you for everything. But I credit her with teaching me what critical thinking is, both formally and informally. So she would give us talks about critical thinking, what that entails, but then she also created an environment to facilitate it in a way that we could also like customize for ourselves. Yeah, experiment with. Yeah. So, yeah, she was great at that. And I've had so many other educators and friends and all kinds of people who have been there when I needed someone like that. But when I hear that question, she's just the first immediate person to pop into mind.
Love that. So, this is my last question before we move into the rapid fire.
Hmm.
I love this. So I'm voting here, right? You said you learned to look in the mirror and tell yourself, I love you.
Hmm.
Because as long as you do that, you know somebody loves you.
Yeah.
I just, that is just gorgeous. When you say those words, and I've done a lot of work with positive intelligence where you go
Yeah.
back, you look at pictures. Are you speaking to the accomplished adult doctor you are now, or are you speaking to that little boy who was one time probably just a little too much?
Probably primarily I'm speaking to that little boy. Like I think of myself back then all the time, especially now, like we talked about in the hindsight piece of it. And yeah, I just like wish I could go back and like yeah, I just wish I could go back and do for him what he needed. And there are so many people that were doing amazing things for me and were just like loving me to the best of their ability and knowing what um and then trying to do everything they could for all the information they had. And then of course, like, no one's perfect, and in hindsight I can see some things, even just creating feelings, not like, oh, I would go back and have this kind of schedule or structure. It's just like I just want to like hold I just want to, yeah, hold him, hug him, and
Tell him
the thing.
he's spectacular,
Yeah.
right? And look at the grown-up doctor he became.
Yeah. And then sometimes I'm talking to him too, like that's who I'm seeing in the mirror. But I know that beneath all that, even today, is that kid,
Yeah.
like, so yeah.
I feel that, and I really want to acknowledge the emotion for you around it. Like I know that the work I do in the world I do because I don't want kids to grow up feeling the way my husband felt, the way
Yeah.
my brothers felt, the way I felt, or the way my kids felt the first 10 years before I started understanding this
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So there's this power in the moment of knowing here's where we are now, and we understand now what we didn't understand then.
Right.
From here, we can move forward. Thank you,
Right.
Dr. Angela. Um, when we know better, we do better.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. And we can, whatever you can do now going forward, you can't change the past, but you have the time you have to
Yeah.
to do your best.
I believe the three words that can change your life are up until now,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Up
Yeah.
until now, you did the best you could.
Yeah.
Here's where you are, and you get to move in. Okay, my friend, are you ready to move into rapid fire?
Yeah.
Okay. This has been a delicious conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, if you could delete one expectation neurotypical people have of people with ADHD, or maybe of you,
Hmm.
what would it be?
I would say cleaning and or grading. Grading is obviously very me specific. I think cleaning, if there was like some way that was just off my plate, because I actually do very much value clean spaces to work in and to live in. I'm just not good at maintaining them.
Yeah. I feel that. Okay, what's one memory of your childhood that made sense after your diagnosis?
I would say the hyper focus thing, and like one, and kind of understanding like if it's not controlling what I pay attention to, we could have easily realized I had ADHD a long time ago. And so I think like that made sense. The things not existing, made sense, like out of sight, out of mind, not being able to find things right in front of my face. Those things all, and the procrastination, that made a ton of sense. They all just,
Well, and I do want to say that we know so much more now about
yeah,
ADHD than we did 20 years ago.
yes,
That, the shift in how we understand it and how we look at it is so dramatically different. So for those of you who are looking backwards, again, up until now, like we can't beat ourselves up for what we didn't know. We can
right,
take the insight and the awareness and move forward with it.
right.
So converse, what's the one thing your ADD gives you that you would never trade no matter what?
I would say my creativity and my versatility. I, yeah, and in a way now a confidence to try new things. I used to avoid new things for fear that I'd be bad at them or couldn't get them, and now I have I'm like, that's interesting. I don't know anyone who does that. I'm going to learn how to do that, and there's resources now. Like I've completely taught myself most of my hobbies, like fly fishing, for example, from YouTube and self learning and experimentation. Like, and I've gotten over the anxiety or not wanting to try things. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't do anything I didn't do well like
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, because then I was going to be wrong, and
Right.
I was wrong enough.
Right.
I
Exactly.
didn't need, I didn't need to be
I
more
don't want to
wrong
be. It's not like an over cockiness or something. It's like I've been told I'm wrong so much I
so
can't
much.
bear it to be
Yeah,
wrong
exactly.
something else. Yeah.
Okay, so similar to this, what's one advantage of the ADD brain you think the modern world is wasting?
Similarly, I would say probably our creativity and our versatility, and I think there are jobs and roles in life that do just where we really shine because of those things, but we're not necessarily guided to them very easily, and we're not like supported for and helping find like these are the things that you could be good at, or and even kind of like help you mold yourself toward those things, right? We have to kind of stumble into them, or like you know do a ton of self advocating and retrying to try to get to that. So I think that versatility, creativity just can't be overstated.
Yeah, and stop trying to fit us into somebody else's box and
Yeah,
let us create the new
yeah,
box. Yeah.
yeah. And so for example, like so many innovations, like I don't think we'd have light bulbs, cars, world famous timeless paintings, all of these things, right? The world loves what we provide and what we give, but they don't like the route to it, and the daily interactions and things like that. And so it's like you don't get one without the other.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. So you've joked that you didn't choose cognitive psychology, Cog Life chose you.
Yeah.
What do you say to parents? So I do a lot of work with parents of teens and young adults in particular whose paths are not linear,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
What do you say to parents who are worried that their child's meandering or a distracted path might not ever lead them someplace, wherever there is supposed to be?
Yeah, I would say don't you know don't fall so, because parents are getting messaging from the world about their kids the same way their kids are, and as parents we're so self-conscious, and especially for a while our identities are very attached to our children's outcomes, right? And so we get caught up in that a lot, and ideally we slowly as we give them more autonomy and freedom, their identity is becoming theirs and their responsibility, and that you don't have to take that on. And I think the more we think that what they do and what they look like and how they turn out is all a reflection on me, the more anxious we get and try to control that because we want control over that image of ourselves. And so I think and it's one of those interesting things where the more you try to do that and the more you control it, you're going to actually cause, or maybe not completely cause, but like push things in a direction that you're the direction you're not wanting to see. Like you're going to bring it, it's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I think that what just like let him go. Like my dad would have had me choose business or something, or law, something like that, as an undergraduate major, and go into all of that. And I have always chosen my, you know, like my major, all of these things based on interest, because I can't not, right? Like that's how I work. So I chose all these things based on interest, and I've had tons of, like, this path has been like, like this. It hasn't been like some straight path, and I'm here, right? And I'm not done. I have goals. I see places I want myself to be that I'm not there yet, but I also was able to complete a doctorate with ADHD, and it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Um, Next to parenting a child with ADHD while having ADHD, right? That might be the only harder thing. And so it was hard, and there were really dark moments around trying to get that done, especially when my job became contingent on it and things like that. And I'm here. So I would say, like, trust your kid's brain doing what it does, and be their advocate for making their world around them trust their brain too, right? So advocate for your kids, versus, yeah, versus like getting embarrassed or self-conscious and thus turning the world's negative eye. Yeah, don't don't turn toward them in that way too. Stand with them, facing forward, facing outward with them, and let them wander. Yeah, and then that, I love that saying, "Not all who wander are
You're
lost."
lost. Right. Well, and the metaphor I use for what you're describing is that, if we're holding the reins
Hmm.
of their life, they can't.
Right.
We've got to let go and let them take the reins, and they might go a little off
Mhm.
track before they find their path.
Right.
But they're not going to find their path if we're trying to guide it.
Right. And it's their life, it's not yours. And it's really hard when they're a baby and you're responsible for everything. And then they just very slowly get bigger and older and more independent. And you are supposed to transition your thinking along with that, of how you're supposed to be responsible for them. And it's, yeah, they're theirs, they're not yours.
And that's our job,
Yeah.
right? Our journey is to be with them on their journey.
Yeah.
All right, last question for you is what do you believe a summit like this, why do you believe that it deserves parents' attention?
Yeah. I think this is great that this, happens and is happening, and I want to go and watch all these other, interviews and, just talks, that are part of the summit. But I think one thing is helping parents help their kids, giving them permission. I think, kind of like we were just talking about, the world puts all this pressure on you as a parent, that your kids come out a certain way, or else they're bad and you feel bad, or you think the world even convince you your children aren't going to be okay, which is what we all deeply want, if they don't conform. And that's like not necessarily true. So I think, one, it creates community. You're actually not by yourself as a parent of kids with ADHD. You're not by yourself if you have ADHD. And, it gives you permission to relax on your kids, like to like relax some of those really strict and unrealistic expectations of them, and thus will help them relax. And also some self forgiveness as a parent, right? Like I started, the talk I gave. It's been 10 years, actually, almost to the day now, and it. Uh, I start out with these very like harsh statements that I've heard throughout my life. Like people saying like, "Wow, you're so for someone so smart, you can be so stupid, and what's wrong with you?" And like all those types of things. And being honest, I have said things just as harsh to my son since that talk. Like I know how that feels. Those things are said to me, but in those moments of like exhaustion or frustration that we discussed earlier, we're all humans. And I've said those things. I've apologized to him for those things. And I think that's really important, that your children are entire human beings deserving of all the respect as anybody else. So it's important that we apologize when we don't handle ourselves well. But give yourself some forgiveness and permission to be a human being. And just like, I I know how that feels. I'm a person with ADHD, and I've said some of those harsh things to my son too when I'm frustrated. And like, why don't you just like do this? Because it's hard. It's frustrating. So I think forgive yourself, have your own self compassion, relax your expectations of your kid just to the point that, you are setting them up for success and happiness and to just like thrive. While, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's a coherent answer, but
It's beautiful. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. It was delightful talking to you.
yeah, thank you for this opportunity. It's been really fun to talk. And, yeah.
Are you loving the advice and insights you're getting? Well, you can get lifetime access to all the summit session when you upgrade your ticket to the VIP pass. This means you're not only getting unlimited access to the sessions, you will also unlock the audio version of the entire summit, expert action blueprint with key takeaways and action steps, English subtitles, and a brilliant workbook that will help you implement everything that you get. You see, the VIP Pass is purposely designed to help you digest all of the content from the summit and implement this advice in your own life. And as you know, the internet is flooded with advice about ADHD. But how much of it actually comes from credible sources? How many times have you been led astray by unknown or unverified advice? Well, unlimited access to the entire summit is a place where information is not only just abundant, it's also trustworthy. So, if you want to be confident in the ADHD strategies every step of the way, then I think this is a place to start. I'm totally positive that you're gonna love the VIP Pass and all of the valuable resources that we have created for you. It's like having a personal library of expert knowledge right in your pocket. And here's the best part. If for any reason at all you don't love it, we'll refund you in full. No questions asked. So you really have nothing to lose. Grab your VIP pass now and don't miss this opportunity.